Hello, 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 everyone who's here now. We're going to wait just another few minutes to see if we can get some more people to join. Welcome to another episode of Supply Chain Information Flow. We're here today to go to part four, episode four of our series, Calling All Relationships. Is this episode four? Yeah, it's episode four.
It
See,
is
thanks,
indeed.
Gary. We have spent a great amount of time talking about building good relationship management uh, processes and the various layers uh, that make up a good supplier relationship management program. And we're going to continue those conversations today to talk about the why. But before we get started again, I'll wait just a minute or so. I wanted to congratulate Mr. Sheldon Mydat and his company for being recognized as one of, well, there are several recognitions. One, uh, what is it? The hottest platform in the UK?
I can't really take personal credit for that because, well, I could, I guess. But no, I think we were picked up. We were picked up by Digital Innovation. They did a piece on us way back last year, but they then came back. I think they did a bit of a roundup and called us out as one of their top 12 digital innovators of last year, which is really, really good because they're a very reputable magazine in the EU and UK. So, I was really, really quite kind of psyched up over that. It was great. And of course, we've I think we're on the procurement software platform. James Meads, I think you know him,
Yes.
uh, David, and probably several of the people on this call will probably know him. Anyway, it's a marketplace for software, different technology, and he's the interesting thing about this, the fact that we're on the it's great that we've been listed as one of the top 10 hottest tech platforms in the U coming out of the UK. But the really interesting thing about that was that there were three, I think three in the top 10 that were relationship platforms or relationship services or platforms. So that for me is massive, because it really does tell me that it certainly affirms what I already think that relationship management is the big thing. It really, really is the big thing now, as I've been kind of prophesying for some time now.
I love
So I
how
was happy
he
about
he
that.
he he downplays his position in the top 12 and then calls himself a prophet in the same sentence. That's like humility and hubris, like right after each other. That was pretty good. I don't know
But
if
you
I've
know
ever
what it
done
is? It's because I'm in the presence of this godly beard that you're wearing. So
that. It is at least 70% the fact that I haven't been to the barber in the new year.
it's a beautiful thing you're sponsoring there.
Thank you
Love
so
it.
much.
I do
Thank you
try,
so
but
much.
I never get that far with it. It gets long, and then I think I've got to get rid of it. I feel too old. But for you,
You
it
know,
doesn't make you look old. It's good. It's a good look.
thank you. I appreciate it. Actually, before we get started, I have a little rant. I have to vent. Do you guys mind
Oh,
if I vent a little bit? Just put a thumbs up in the chat if it's okay for me to vent for like 2 seconds or more than that. It is absolutely related to the topic at hand. Um, but
go for it.
do you mind? Just throw a thumbs up in the chat if you can. Oh, great. Gary Embley. All right. All right. I got one. That's enough for me. So I have a stakeholder and he manages the relationship with a managed service provider, and that managed service provider provides support for an ERP system. Um, I had a QBR with them last week, and as is the case, all green. Everything works.
Hmm.
My stakeholder came to me uh, Tuesday. Meanwhile, I had been on vacation. I was in the Dominican Republic. I was definitely missing those mimosas and the sun. And he came to me and he said, "How can I get out of this contract?" Which is obviously a surprise to me
Hmm.
because everything was green just a second ago. Um, and as I dive into this, as I start talking to the project teams and the project leads on the vendor side and the key stakeholder, I recognize that there's separate channels of communication
Mm.
and the governance of the entire contract is not really being done. So it leads me directly into the conversations that we're going to have today, right? Um, we're not, my stakeholder felt that we were not successfully impacting the business's success with this relationship. In your opinion, how would effective governance of this relationship impact long-term business success? I'm asking you, Sheldon. You're the expert here.
So if we're talking about the watermelon effect,
Definitely talk about the watermelon effect.
yeah, sounds like it, or the illusion of the the green SLA, or whatever you want to call it. It's often the case that if you rely on very thin data, such as KPI dashboards or SLA green SLAs, it's very easy to see a service looking great, but really not understanding or not seeing what some kind of undercurrents, that might be pulling a relationship apart. It's very often associated with more traditional type engagements as well, where they don't really have any. We're not even getting into the governance, but we're just looking at the fact that if you look back, um, SRM governance, it was very, very traditional anyway. There wasn't really any relationship management to speak of. It was all kind of KPI dashboards and scorecards. What can you glean by? There's no narrative behind that. At least none that we can actually use to course correct or understand, how we got to the red or how we got to the green. You see a string of greens, it looks good, but it doesn't really tell you very much, does it?
Right.
Um, and so yeah, and we're going to get into that in these slides, but the amount of CPOs that we speak to, let's say, yeah, we've looked at SRM before, but we've seen the systems, but none of them do relationships. They're all KPI dashboards, which was good,
Right. Right.
great, because that was the kind of product market fit, supply chain, the overhead, purist procurement, always looking down at the numbers. So the kind of level of kind of the sophistication around the governance, um, it didn't really allow for anything more because there wasn't really any appetite for it.
Hmm.
The focus was down, looking down, and that's what determines whether we're in a good place or not, just by looking at those kind of traffic lights.
Yeah.
Um, and things obviously have been changing of late over the last 3 to 4 years, haven't they?
You're
Which is
talking about
very
the
encouraging.
the you're talking about like the proliferation of digital transformation exercises across a lot of organizations, right?
Yeah, I am. I am. So let me bring some slides up. Actually, I think this would be a good point to do that. So hopefully these have come up. Let me just
Wow, that
move
guy is
that.
handsome.
The one on the left, yeah. You know what? The one on the left, yeah. The one on the right's got. He looks like that must be when you kind of started growing the beard.
Maybe.
Yeah, looking good, looking sharp. So we want to talk about bringing it all together, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to
Um,
talk about tying all of it together in practice, right?
yes,
But we'll
yes,
start with
exactly.
the idea of digital transformation. How does a digital transformation redefine the supplier client relationship?
Sure. Okay, I've got to take you back in time to help kind of explore how things have changed. just touched on the fact that everything was pretty binary before, and a traditional kind of way of engaging, very events-based activities, scorecards, very kind of numbers-driven. Um, whilst what we've always done, even through doing things in that kind of, if let's just call it an analog way of engaging. So let's just say analog versus digital. We're all used to analog, okay, over the years. Just giving you an analogy. So despite us working in quite an analog fashion, the way that we've done things operationally hasn't necessarily changed. Obviously, there's been the advent of more technology. Um,
Hmm.
But the way we've always operated operationally, because we've never operated inside a contract. We never have. We've always operated in the real world where things don't happen to page or by schedule or whatever. Um, but because of the tendency to focus down on on the in this traditional way of engaging our suppliers, very performance and cost driven, we've kind of ignored everything that is possible by focusing up into the relationships, into the operational space. Forget the relationship space, just focusing on what we do operationally. What we're doing now, for example, on this call, is generating, if we were transcribing everything that we were saying, that would become data. 90% of company data is unstructured data. Okay. And it's always been that way, but we've ignored it. We've ignored it because we've been busy doing things different ways, in a different way.
So like
Now,
your team's discussions that you have with the
yeah.
supplier, or like text messages,
Well,
that's all
unstructured
you.
data is everything. Unstructured data, well, yes, yeah. Unstructured data is all that Teams data. It's videos, it's documentation, it's chat, it's email, it's everything. All that stuff that we've done for years. We've always done it. Now there's more tech, as you said, Teams, for example. But Skype or whatever before that, we can go back to some of the earlier platforms. But it's always been there, right? So it's never really played a part though. But there's so much you can glean from that across an ecosystem. So much. Now it's becoming a real thing. We're really capitalizing on that now. Just look at generative AI.
Yes.
OpenAI, its playground is unstructured data, and there's a hell of a lot of it out there to actually capture and glean. So that's a big part of how we're transforming our environment. Okay, it's not all about the tech is a small part. In fact,
Hmm.
the most challenging part is the bit where we all are, where the people are. That's the biggest challenge to digital transformation because people are, the way we do things, the way it's a fact that when it comes to digital transformation, the biggest challenges are the challenges that come from us.
So it,
Aligning on vision, aligning on change, driving change through, resistance to change, and all the different things that come out of the people layer. But that's the biggest source of value. It's
so
been
let's
known.
let's let's go to a hypothetical, right? We just talked
Yep.
about my little vent rant in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
How would a data-driven approach to governance make this relationship more efficient? Like if I had access to all of that various unstructured data, how would that in your platform, for example, make um make my relationship more transparent and efficient with the supplier?
So let me start taking you through some of these slides, and that'll give more of an answer to this question. So look, and this isn't done as some by way of selling Suppeco. It's not. That's not what we're intending to do here at all. Um, but the platform is all about driving top line exploration, exploring what you can garner from having a more collaborative relationship. And you can do that naturally if you think about um, working operationally together rather than just focusing on that. If you think of it as an upturned triangle, or a pyramid, upturned pyramid, instead of driving down at that bottom line where there's nothing really, nowhere really to maneuver apart from driving cost, Whereas at the top of that triangle or the upturned triangle pyramid, you've got all this space to collaborate and work together. So naturally speaking, that's where we're aiming. Okay, that's exactly where we're aiming. There's a lot of scope for exploring value and innovation in that space by coming together. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing to know. So one of the organizations that we work with, BAE Systems, I mean, they've been using the Suppeco platform for 4 years now, and it's it's an instrumental tool in the way they explore innovation and value, collaborative innovation with their supply chain. And we can talk various examples of how that's manifested. That there are thousands of these kind of statistics that you can see on the screen now. Thousands. You'll know loads of them. I'm sure we all know loads of them. The thing is, they're all still current. Okay, now these are examples from obviously well-known brands that tell us where we're hemorrhaging and how much value we tend to hemorrhage by not focusing on relationship-driven value. And it was actually during the pandemic that most of the analysts out there from McKinsey to Gartner and everybody in between were saying that procurement and supply chain professionals need to invest heavily in relationship-driven resilience because they were all about driving, rather than focus on just-in-time management, they were looking at just-in-case sources of resilience, and that's all about that's what we're talking about here. In fact, it was a CPO at BAE that said it really well coming off the back of the pandemic. We're going to need to find other ways to meet the value targets. Others looking up because the traditional category managed approach or cost, spend management approach to these engagements is going to find it more and more challenging because as business shrinks in recession economics, if business shrinks, those predefined, pre-negotiated margins, whatever, 15, 10, 15, 20%, are going to shrink too. Whereas the value targets are still mile high. They're still up there. They don't shrink. They're like inflation. And the way we're going to meet those is by collaborating with our suppliers. And so that's what this is all about. But this is about creating an infrastructure that enables you to collaborate meaningfully. And we're going to come on to that. And that's going to get into more of the kind of weeds of that. The answer to the question you just set. There are two more important statistics here, though. The first one, only 6% of companies out there have full visibility of their supply chain. If you think of indirect, it's probably even lower. That you can't see around bends and you can't see beyond your tier ones. Let's face it. So these are going to come into focus very heavily in a minute. These two statistics. Here's another one for you. The further you go along supply chain, in fact, before I even say that, 95% plus of companies out there are SMEs globally.
Small and medium-sized businesses.
Small and medium-sized businesses. And the further you go upstream in your supply chain, the smaller those companies tend to become. And 43% of those companies have zero visibility of their produce once it leaves their premises. They're too busy trying to pay the bills. In fact, a quote from a supplier that we were speaking to: "We don't even know who the customer is. We're just a filler in the sandwich." That's how they see themselves. The problem with that, with both of these, and this is where they come into stark focus, is that we know that CSR, ESG legislation is increasing exponentially globally. And where does it go? With 80% of a company's revenue being generated outside its borders by a supply chain, the legislation obviously hits the customer and goes straight out to the supply chain, which is what you'd expect. And suddenly you look at these statistics and think, okay, that's interesting. That's a problem. Because these smaller companies, let's talk about the SMEs, they've got their hands up in the air going, hey, what do you want me to do? I'm busy trying to pay the bills here. And I don't have the processes and I don't have the standards because we're a much smaller company. And like I said, I don't even know who we're making our rivets for. So one more small statistic here. And I can attest to this top point, having worked in outsourcing and divestment for many years. An EcoVadis study showed that out of 100% of the suppliers that they surveyed lots of suppliers, obviously, lots of organizations. The CSR clauses, or 100% of the CSR clauses that were pushed out into contract had no bearing in reality and weren't worth the paper they were written because they had no bearing in reality. And so this, looking at my own experiences in outsourcing, novating hundreds of contracts or more as part of a divestment or an outsource or M&A deal, the CSR clauses would be a checklist. Tick, 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 just to get them done because we've got loads of these things to novate. And so it was worthless. But this is exactly what happened. So, and you're kind of imposing it, right? Because these deals have got to get done. You can't impose it. You can't impose it. So you just take this, just go back to this smaller company. You can't impose that on these small companies. You've got to take them on a journey. You cannot, and that's why this is in this deck, because you cannot separate relationship management from the drive for sustainable supply chain. They are one in the same. They are if you want them to succeed anyway, especially if you want the latter to succeed. We used to have, practice relationship management of a sort without thinking about sustainability, because that's it's a newer thing, right? Now legislation's got teeth. We don't. Companies don't want logos found in landfill. They certainly don't want to be associated with companies, where garment factories are catching fire. So it's an important area, very, very important area, not one to be taken lightly. And if you want to succeed, you want to move the needle. And there are companies out there that are really making successful inroads here. You've got to be able to bring your supply chain along on that journey, and you do that by fostering good relationships with them. And there are plenty of companies that are doing well at that actually now.
So the majority of these relationships that we build as sourcing and procurement people, right? We have relationships with the suppliers. We talk to the salespeople. We build out a contract. Then we have to have the supplier live up to that contract. That's a traditional relationship. We have a VMO, a vendor management office, or a supplier management office, and their job is to take the contract that we negotiated and make sure the supplier does what they're supposed to do.
And that's
a lot of these
still true today.
Right. And it's still true today. I'm living it, right? But from your conversation, from this conversation, from the things that we've been talking about throughout this entire series, value has to be the driver for these relationships. So how does focusing on value rather than cost benefit or the contract benefit the supplier, right? And the client? How do we get to that?
Well, they're one in the same. Benefiting the supplier and benefiting the customer is the direction of travel. Okay. If it's all about benefiting the customer without benefiting the supplier, then you've got a problem. And the way things used to be done was very much, hammering margin. That wasn't really thinking of what's good for the supplier. Supplier is in a good position because we're buying from them. They should be happy. That's not the case anymore. Doesn't work that way. And in fact, we have customers whose very mission is to become their supplier's customer of choice, because they know that that's existentially the way they've got to be. There's no future in doing things the way we used to do. Just look at look at the Red Sea troubles at the moment. We've got ships going around the Cape of Good Hope, extra month at sea. All the way around, that is, it's an extra 35 days from there to there. I mean, it's crazy, but it's got to happen, right? So you've got Tesla closing their operations in Germany because they don't have parts sitting on a ship. So that, there's a whole conversation there about resilience, but there's another conversation there about being a supplier's customer of choice. Because if you've got a manufacturer that knows that it supplies in it's parts in short supply, they want to be at the front of the queue. So that's about value for a start. How do you drive that value? Drive that value by fostering better relationships. We're going to get into it on the next, I think it's on the next page actually, how we start to unpack what that looks like. And there are a number of different ways that we do that. In terms of best practice, you can put technology behind it or not. It doesn't matter. It's about best practice. And technology, remember, is only the enabler. The actual relationship is the story. Okay, it's got to be said. Tech is great. It's an enabler. But if the tech broke, we'd still have to work, right? So it's an enabler. of a good relationship, of good practice. But life goes on without tech, right? Not sure how we do it nowadays. You know,
Don't
I'm
say
as
that.
addicted.
Don't say that.
I'm as addicted to my iPhone as the next person, right? So,
Don't
but
say
you know
that.
what I'm saying.
I'm in tech sourcing. If there's no tech, there's no job for David. So let's not do that.
Fair enough.
Let's
Oh, I just made
move
it.
on. Move
Yeah, let's move on then. So look, there are actually five key cornerstones that I'd like to refer to. There is only four on the page, obviously, but there are five key cornerstones to the service, to a good service, as I see it, in a digitally transformed service. We start to unpack and give more meaning to how you know we taking this unstructured data and we're applying it through giving that data meaning, structure, that unstructured data, giving it structure and compartmentalizing it, so structure with a small s. Because the unstructured data remains unstructured data, but we need to need to put it into boxes. Okay, first thing you do in order to actually start extracting value, you've got to start putting it into place. So that's just logical. So the first one on the top left is called four pillars. Now this is where and look, we've as I said, we speak to a lot of CPOs. You just alluded to an example of lots of green lights and suddenly being hit with this surprise, you know, whatever. We don't, this attrition in the relationship or whatever. So we've taken all of the unstructured data, okay, and we've created an infrastructure within the relationship space, okay, lots and lots of data. We've seen, we speak to CPOs, they say, yeah, we know the CPO, we know SRM systems, none of them do relationships, they're all KPI dashboards. There's so much stuff going on behind the scenes, isn't there? Let's face it, it's called narrative. It's called narrative, it's called the relationship. So we create the structure, it's called four pillars, or what we call the digital relationship layer. That breaks the entire engagement down globally. This can be as big as you want it to be into four main areas: relationship, commercial, projects, and service, and a bunch of different subcategories, service lines, product lines. I'm not going to go into any detail on that now. Suffice to say, we have created a differentiating digital relationship layer, which is all about taking all of that unstructured data the same way that, in fact, we are working with Microsoft and Azure AI, the same way the generative AI uses the world's web for its playground. We're doing exactly the same. We've actually created the foundation to do that using Azure AI. But it's unstructured data, but it's not world web wide. It's not wide world or worldwide, excuse me. It's customers supply chain wide. So it's everything in that space and down to the individual contributors of data, uploaders of data, everything that they do within the ecosystem. It's all within the playground that we use. Anyway, so that's that. Number two, and I'm happy to show you a lot more on that or in the next session. The second one is called actionables. Really, really important. So again, now this is what digital transformation is all about. Okay, this absolutely nails it. Again, it's about unstructured data and all of that good stuff. But so McKinsey did a study back in 2019, just before the pandemic, actually. And in it, they said that digital transformation, digital platforms, procurement platforms such as ours, can affect an additional 3 to 10% incrementally on an annual basis because they can see things and do things in real time. In other words, they can look at services, they can identify the services and work with the services, with the mobilized teams, build agents, etc., in real time, and they can garner feedback and remedy and management in real time. But it's, in other words, all they're doing is they're taking and they're taking events-based activity and they're turning it into continuous improvement. So they are radically changing this whole mobilization. So you think of two KPIs, time to action and time on task, two KPIs that are radically reduced, driving savings. And these are traditional cost overheads with running resource
Okay.
on projects, on services. So it's transforming them. It really is transforming. And now the third one is insights. In order to make those first two work, you must only use live data. It's because if you plug in static data into a digital platform, then that's your weakest link, isn't it? Clearly.
Garbage in,
And
garbage out.
well, yeah, we're back to analog, essentially. So
Hmm.
this is all about live data. Everything about this is it's leveraging all of that unstructured data because there's tons of value in it. Just harping back to the old Gartner slide that we've all seen. You know, where you've got the line that goes from day one to year five, and you've got this red line where it's hemorrhaging value because it's had nothing, no good practice or disciplines against it. And then you've got the one running through the middle, which is where you've executed or deployed some contract management. And then you've got this hockey stick that goes up 25% over term. That's the relationship value. Now, that, by the way, is talking about what you get in this top left-hand quadrant. All that unstructured data, because that's relationship. That's the uncontracted bit. The
So
contracted
so
bit.
to
So
go
anyway,
back
so
to go back to the
yeah,
hypothetical,
yeah, so
the my little vent, right?
yeah,
If we had access
yeah,
to this is the hypothetical part of it. If we had
I get
access
it.
to unstructured data, those teams chats between the different um product teams and the product leads and all of that stuff,
Yeah,
we'd have been able to create actionable changes within the platform that's between both parties
yeah. So
that would
correct.
facilitate continuous improvement, right?
100%, 100%. So I don't know the specifics of the issues that you alluded to earlier on. Suffice to say, they looked green from a distance, but then beneath the surface there was clearly something, which may not have been directly related to that green SLA. It could have been somewhere else. It could have been someone else's view, someone else's personal perception of the relationship, whatever. So all these things are really important. Um, but if you've got that narrative being generated by the different stakeholders, you can see it. You can see it. There's no getting away from it because you're pulling
Right.
all of that data in. So you get the green KPI, you get the dashboards, but you
And
also get the narrative.
it's based on real customer satisfaction and real sentiment analysis that this stuff.
It's not just that. It's based on literal, commentary from and cadence from activity. You can see even without anybody doing anything, you can see because the system, what it does is it looks at all of the data, it quality stamps and date stamps everything else. That's the fifth point I haven't got to yet. But it uses, yes, obviously there's technology involved, there's algorithms, and smart tech involved, and we use that to quality stamp, date stamp every single bit of individually contributed, either created within the platform or curated from other systems, which is then brought into the platform. And we use that to assess the health of that specific part of the engagement. Because although we're talking relationships here, we're going down into the detail. There are specific projects and services that are, we're not. When I say relationships, we're not sitting around talking about, singing Kumbaya together. This is an important, often, global enterprise relationships with multi-layered and complex engagements and people involved in the intricacy, the minutiae of these engagements. You can see all of it. You can see all of it, and the system sees all of it, and ensures that those plates either keep spinning, or alternatively tells you when they fall.
Okay.
And if they fall, it's because people haven't been whatever they happen. It will show you the shortfalls. Let's put it that way. It will show you the shortfalls because the system doubles down on workflow automation as well. So rather than
So
have. So let
I
me
mean,
get back to these points very, very quickly because I
okay,
want to.
sorry.
So look, live data is very, very important. Okay, as you can kind of hear. Without it, the whole thing becomes, well, that's the weakest link. The fourth point is called Omni. This is very important. This is where we create an omni-channel environment for the entire ecosystem to come together in a very structured and controlled way. Now, it's very important to note that every one of your suppliers is going to have a bilateral contract. with you, the customer, right? And those contracts are likely to contain any number of different sensitivities, whether it be IP or pricing or failing SLAs, as we're just kind of referring to. So all sorts of stuff, and that's the holy grail, obviously. Can't be shared with the supplier. The customer may not want to share it with other suppliers. But here's the thing: the services that those suppliers are providing are very likely to be provided anything other than bilaterally, aren't they? So you've got two distinct swim lanes that are they are kind of mutually exclusive because they have to be, but at the same time, they've got to be able to work together in harmony because
Correct.
one needs to be bilateral and try and all of that good stuff, but the other one is anything but bilateral. It's group, it's collaborative. So there's a lot of slick stuff that needs to happen to enable those good practices to be honored. Those swim lanes to work smoothly. Very, very important. Very important. The fifth one, and this is kind of going to what you were saying as well, by the way. So the fifth one is called automate. And this is where you take all of that data from all of these different contributors and the stakeholders that spoke to you, that surprised you on that call earlier today about the state of that relationship. So we take all of that information and we wrap a set of our algorithms around every single data point on the platform in terms of quality. And there are a number of different quality markers. It's not just, oh, well, that's good. And that. There are a number of quality markers, different equations that have to be measured in order to drive output. And then there's obviously age, of course, because data ages, right? It's
Hmm.
very valuable. Just look at this bottom left-hand thing. Teeth in. Data's valuable, most valuable when it's live, but it ages fast. It's a
Yeah.
commodity. So we take all of that and we push it out. We push it out to the supply chain. So we don't expect people to log in and look for stuff, look for KPIs. We look at the narrative. We score the narrative. We can see when things are being logged into, when they're being added to, when they're being processed, and we push that out. It was actually BP. We sat on this talk with BP and MTN in Saudi a couple of months back, just before Christmas, and BP said we're swimming in data. We got too much of it. Yes, it's important. Of course, it's important. But we've got too much data at once. We've got multiple screens. We've got dashboards and scorecards and everything. It's too much. We want to know what's keeping us up at night now. That's what's important. Which plate's about to drop? Which service is about to go into the red? Whatever. What are the problems that are keeping us up at night now? So that's exactly what we do. We look for every single bit of data that's going on now. We look at the aging process, and on a Monday morning, the system pushes the data out, whether it's KPIs or whatever, or different deliverables in service lines or product lines or subcategories, whatever they happen to be. You can do it all within the platform. We push it out so that you don't have to go logging in for data, logging in and looking for dashboards and looking through the minutia. The minutia follows you, but only the bit you
Hmm.
need to know now. Very, very important. And all of this stuff helps to avoid surprises like the one you got on the phone earlier on, because it tracks everything and it avoids surprises.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
it
and
also
it's
facilitates things like continuous improvement, right?
it's it's core. It's core to it. The whole point of it is that it's because everything is live and it's pushing the data out at all times. So something happens, bang, it's pushing it straight out. It's inviting that person back in, not just the customer, but the suppliers as well, because they're on the hook for a lot of this stuff, right? But they want to be as well. So this is about, you remember what you were saying before about something being good for the customer and the supplier? Well, the suppliers want to be on the hook for it. They want ownership. They want to be involved. They want an equitable relationship. And that's another key factor here. You want to be able to bring your suppliers in, give them a voice, give them a place, give them equitable access, give them ownership, get them to log in and score KPIs themselves, get them to look at the services and critique. do this is what it's all about. It's about creating it's a new experience for customers and suppliers to collaborate properly. It's that's what effective negotiation is, right? Solution negotiating rather than position negotiating. Solution negotiating is by definition collaborative and has been shown to be
Correct.
more effective than position, which is where everybody's encamped, and this is my position, this is what I want to get. That's, it still happens a lot, but it's a lot more confrontational. Not good if you
Okay.
want to become your supplier's customer of choice. So, yeah, look, we've been involved in quite a few things as a selection here. IDC, this is a really good one, IDC. We were named IDC Innovator in 2023. And this is current. Well, actually, no, it's 24 now, isn't it? Um, so this is an interesting one. I put this in because this talks about what we're saying, right? We were talking about KPIs and the kind of watermelon effect, etc. So there's a lot more in the BAE case study that talks about this, but this is a quote, and I put it in because I thought it was interesting and it was relevant. KPIs are red, but the narrative is really, really important because that tells us how we got there. And this is the quote. This, we want to know how we got to the red or how we got to the green, because that's the real value. Because we know where we're going with that, how we got there,
Right.
and why. We all know that the why is more important than the what, right? If we've all
Yeah.
read Simon Sinek's, again,
I mean
what was it
that
called
that
again?
that data, that information, having it pushed to, like, I think in my situation, if there was a platform similar to this that had the sentiment data, that had all of that unstructured email and
Mm.
Teams messages that we could use to deliver the why, why the supplier is actually doing continuous improvement, why the supplier is actually being innovative, but that information is not filtering up to you. It's not becoming um, new projects. It's not becoming new automation opportunities. It's not becoming business process optimization opportunities. If that was something that could be added or in a platform, I think that might have changed the situation.
I think
Like,
so too. There's every
yeah,
possibility of that. Every possible.
no,
I mean, it's all about the why, right?
yeah,
But if
yeah,
you're focusing on the what, then you get the what is your KPI dashboard. The why is your narrative,
yeah.
and we all know that why is important. Okay, very important. Um, and once you understand the why, then you can also understand the how. I know we're kind of playing with words here, but you know what I'm saying. Um, so yes, so and when you want to look at the why, see when you're looking at all of this unstructured data, then you can naturally talk about the why and the how because it's all there for you to start playing with all of this data. This is why generative AI is so interesting to people. The possibilities are endless. We're doing exactly the same thing. I mean, we're kind of bottling it in a way, in another way, because this is about we do with AI. We've created this infrastructure within the engagement space globally, but we can then use sentiment analysis and psycholinguistic intel. This is the new module that's coming through because we built this foundation of unstructured data, all compartmentalized and relevant to different people and suppliers and the entire ecosystem. And then we can take the AI interpreter lens, which is the module that we're using, that we're deploying, and we can take that lens out. We can pull it out and we can go right wide across the entire engagement, across a pillar, all the different relationship projects or commercial projects or whatever you want to, the different whatever you want to create within an engagement. You can zoom right out and you can analyze what's going on in that space, or you can zoom all the way in. So if you wanted to analyze a specific project and the team and how a negotiation is going, the interpreter is going to look at that and it's going to pull back. It's going to analyze that large group of text. And it's going to look for different nuance in a negotiation. You can also have it, you can also have it hook a stakeholder's narrative. So when there are stakeholders, all stakeholders on the platform have got narrative. You know, what is the best way to manage a person? What is the best? What are they? What is their biggest driver? These different things that you can put in, so that when somebody else looking in or logging onto the platform and they want to find out about somebody who they're going to engage with them on a project, they can see what their drivers are, etc. The interpreter also uses that, can use that, and then what it does is it uses it as context. So if it knows what somebody's looking for, if it knows that whatever about this person, it will then use that as context when it's analyzing the project that they're involved in, or projects. So if it senses a frustration, that a negotiation or delivery is late or this or that, it's looking at, it can use that context and then it will analyze all of that text, that unstructured data basically. And it's not just text, it's not where they type. It could be the transcribed chat. It could be secure chat within the platform. It can be documentation that's been uploaded into the platform, because that's all data as well. And it can be the history of a project, which could go back 18 months, 2 years, whatever. So look all the way back through the history, or it will go back a month, whatever you want it to do. So very, very versatile, very exciting as well. This is the Microsoft partnership that we've obviously we're transactable on Azure now on Marketplace. So they come back and said, hey, do you want to team up on your
We've
interpreter
got
program?
just a few minutes left. I want
Okay,
to open up
I'm
the
going to come off
chat
share.
to I want to open up the chat to anybody who's got any
I think
questions
that's it.
around.
Oh yeah, there's a quick
Um,
sneak preview of the aesthetics of the platform there as well. It's not like
oh
using
yeah.
it in spreadsheets. Um,
If anybody has any questions around supplier information, supplier innovation, continuous improvement, um, supplier relationship management, now is the time to ask that question. In our next and our final episode of the series, we are going to dive into a demonstration of the Suppeco platform and how we can use
that's it. Fair
this
price.
unstructured data layer to create better value-driven relationships. I'm excited to see it. I'm a tech geek. I like to play with toys anyway. So I'm excited to see how this can benefit my organization and myself moving forward. Try to get the most out of my suppliers. That's Kathy. I was looking at the chat for a notification. If there are no questions, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks when we are back with our spotlight on the Suppeco platform.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers, guys.